Public Amenities Commission meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, certainly. Commissioner Caldwell.
Here.
Commissioner Morocco.
Here.
Commissioner Lang.
Here.
Commissioner Rowe.
Present.
Commissioner Galassi.
Also present.
Commissioner McCauley.
Here.
Commissioner Youssef Z.
Here. All right, moving on to salute the flag. Everybody, please stand. All right, ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. All right, moving on to item D, approving the order of the agenda.
I have a comment on that. Do we have the person on J3 on the line? He said he had some conflict that requires him. So if he's on the line, can we move item L1 before item I so that he can participate?
Yes, I actually will second that motion. So basically, the motion is to move item L1 before the items in J, which are public hearing. Okay, so I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye. And then I have a second request to get some clarification on. Mr. Director, item K is items continued from previous agendas. And when we get to the minutes, there's a motion that Commissioner Galassi did, which was seconded by Commissioner McCauley, and we voted 7-0 to have on the next agenda the committees and bylaws, subcommittees and bylaws, and it didn't make it on this one, so.
Correct, and I believe I mentioned at the meeting that it might take us more than one meeting to get that information back to you. So we're going to try to make it for December, but it's on our radar and we're working on it.
Okay, thank you. So I move that we adopt the order agenda as revised.
Okay. Any additional motions to move items in the agenda? All right. Then moving on to item E, blue folder items, additional backup materials. Do we have any blue folder items?
There are no blue folder items.
Okay. And moving on to item F, the consent calendar. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the consent calendar items? Does anybody have anything to pull from the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull item F2 and F4.
Does anybody want to second that?
Does he have to say why, or?
Nope.
Wouldn't that be helpful?
I guess
Yeah.
by that, we're all confused here.
So if you're pulling items from the consent calendar, that means you don't want to approve them in one go. And so then you remove them and then you discuss them in item G, which is excluded consent calendar items.
Understood.
So do a motion to approve items F1 and F3.
Second.
All in favor?
Wait,
Aye.
wait, before you do the vote, we should get public comment on that.
Do we need public comment on approving the consent calendar items?
There are no e-comments or attendees for this item.
Okay. So again, the motion is to approve items F1 and F3 in the consent calendar and then move items F2 to F4 and F4 to the excluded consent calendar items. Okay, one more time the vote,
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
and I'll be nay. So it passes. So moving on to G, excluded consent calendar items, F2.
May I?
Yeah.
Okay, so as I mentioned during the order of agenda, we had discussed about the bylaws being continued, but we had also discussed other subcommittees that we're going to do. And that part didn't make it on there, and it does list, it is on the minutes as 7-0. So and this is more of a question of the chair, you would ask me specifically to come back with some ideas for other committees. So I do have those ideas, and I don't know if that's based on the minutes, if we're going to be able to address that at some point today.
Yeah, so I would assume that we would be able to address that during the member referrals item. So that would be an M1 before adjournment. So we can or we can discuss that in items K, which is continued from previous agendas. We did discuss that, and we did have that conversation shelved for the time being. So I would assume, based on how this agenda is written, we can discuss that in item K.
Thank you. Then I have no other comments on the minutes.
Okay. All right.
So I'll make a motion if nobody else wants to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And so since this was also a part of the excluded consent calendar items, I believe we need a vote on F4 as well.
I have a comment on that one.
Sure.
On your library director's report, you used to put in the stuff about the digitization process. I noticed it wasn't there. Is there an update that you want to?
No update currently. They're still being digitized.
Okay, thank you. And I have no other comments on it.
Motion to approve F4.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. So that concludes item G, excluded consent calendar items. Moving on to item H, public participation on non-agenda items. Moving on to H1 for e-comments and emails received from the public. Do we have any?
No, there are no e-comments or attendees.
Okay. So moving on to item I, ex parte communication. This section is intended to allow all officials the opportunity to reveal any disclosure or ex parte communication about the following public hearings. And I believe before that, is there anyone who wishes to disclose anything prior to the public hearings? Okay. And then moving on to item L1, which I believe was moved prior to item J. So this is the discussion and possible action regarding a special donations request for installation of a plaque at Riviera Village Park.
Good evening, everyone. Gary Margolis, Cultural Arts Manager. And can you share? Thank you. So the item is a special request for an exception to the commemorative donation program, and it's coming from the Villarino family. So the city has a commemorative donation program, and it sets forth the parameters by which members of the public can honor a loved one, commemorate an event or anniversary, or acknowledge an outstanding organization on city property. According to the policy adopted by City Council on September 19th, 2026, that's supposed to be 2026, and amended on October 1st, 2019, donations are limited to benches, engraved bricks only at Veterans Memorial location, and 5 species of trees. Benches and trees include a bronze plaque, and both are limited to predetermined locations. So these are the approved locations. And these are the approved trees. And the other approved items are the engraved brick and the memorial bench. So what the policy says about special requests, it does allow for them. And it says that the director of the Community Services Department has the authority to grant or deny special requests. The policy includes a criteria for evaluating special requests. The department director is asking the Public Amenities Commission to apply that criteria to this special request and make a recommendation. Here's the criteria. So first is compatibility with city infrastructure, plans, and safety requirements, compatibility with site design and furnishings, maintenance needs and costs, the number and type of other donated items in the vicinity of the site, the commemorated individual's impact on the community, and the appropriateness of the content or message presented by the special donation item. And so this is the request that's coming from the Villarino family. First of all, they would like the city to approve and install a new 24-inch by 36-inch bronze memorial plaque at Riviera Village Park, which is not an approved location. This will be in addition to the 24-inch by 36-inch plaque that is already there, that was installed in 1969 when the park was dedicated. The new plaque will include the names of 12 donors that at the time of the park's dedication in 1969 were listed on 12 small circular medallions installed in the sidewalk. All 12 of those medallions are now gone. The new plaque will also provide a little bit of history regarding the origins of the park and the park's logo. The second request is that the city plant and maintain a miniature olive tree, which is not one of the approved trees. So the image on the left is the plaque that's currently there, and the image on the right is the plaque that the family is asking to have installed. This is the text. Would you like me to read the text, or have you already read it?
I think we can read it on our own.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, now, or should I keep going?
You can keep going.
Okay. So here's Riviera Village Park. Obviously, the image on the left is the street view, and the image on the right is the aerial view. You see the circle kind of in the middle? That's where the tree and the plaques would go. This is what the area looks like now. You can see the existing plaque kind of at 5 o'clock. And then this is a mock-up of what the changes might look like. The new plaque will be 180 degrees opposite the existing plaque, and then the miniature olive tree in the center. Other monuments at the park are Torrance has a sign, and there's a Riviera Village sign. And then there is a nearby historical marker, the Hollywood Riviera Beach Club Path of History marker is in Miramar Park, and that's about 500 feet away. Other considerations. The Public Works Department has indicated that bronze plaques are very prone to theft, but if approved by this commission, it will install the plaque in concrete, and the department will also plant and irrigate the tree. Finally, the department will also confirm with the City of Torrance, the co-owner of the park, that it has no objections to these plans. The fiscal impact is there will be no cost to the city to implement this. The family is purchasing the plaque as well as the tree. The only cost to the city would be staff costs to install the two items and ongoing maintenance costs for the tree. The area already has irrigation infrastructure. Here is the special request criteria again, and that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions, and it's now for you to discuss.
Sorry, did you say there was a cost associated?
No, there's none. The only cost would be, obviously, a member of the Public Works Department will install the plaque. So the time that it takes them to install the plaque and to plant the tree. So there is some staff costs, but that's minimal. The big costs are purchasing the plaque and purchasing the tree, and those are being done by the family.
You said that one of the Villarinos was on the phone or the Zoom. It may be appropriate, Mr. Chair, to actually hear
That's
what they
correct.
have to present with it.
Do we have to have a public discussion, or do we have to have a discussion amongst ourselves before we go to the public for comment, correct?
This is part of the initial presentation, so I would think that you'd want the information.
Is it a part of the presentation?
I think it's up to you to decide the order of the discourse at this point.
Okay, it's up to you. You're the chair. I'll let you.
Okay.
I do have some questions too. This has been bouncing around since March of this year. Have you talked to the city of Torrance yet? I think John LaRocca is the head of that department over there. Have you talked to them? That's for you, Mr. Margolis.
I haven't talked to them, no.
So we could be spending time discussing it today and we don't know what Torrance's viewpoint on it is, I believe they actually own 60% of that park. And part of the problem has been they need to do the buy-in. I believe that I don't think we actually have anybody who maintains that park. So, and you, Ms. Orta, you probably know that better, but I would think that it would have been a nice step to actually come
Well,
to
we
us
have-
and say, Torrance is okay with it.
We have spoken with the Deputy Director of the Public Works Department, and he's told us that the irrigation will not be a problem and that the city of Torrance has never not gone along with any other plans for the development of this park that the city has proposed to them.
So just to follow up the commissioner's question, we don't anticipate that there's any pushback that we'll get from the city of Torrance to install this plaque?
The
Or-
Deputy Director of Public Works does not anticipate that, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. And
It's
if-
not like they're going to come back and say, okay, rip your plaque out, Redondo, right?
Well, and also, we will confirm it for sure before the plaque is purchased or installed.
Okay.
I
So-
mean, they've said they will do that.
Okay, so this would still just be contingent on final kind of logistical stuff, just to piggyback off what the commissioner's concern is. We
Correct.
don't want to, go through the process of having someone, fund a plaque, do all this, only for a municipality to come back and say, okay, guys, like, take your plaque out, right? So,
Correct.
okay, excellent.
And the other question is, what's the next step? So if we say yes today, what do? You go to the council to get them to approve it? Do you?
No, the policy says that this decision can be made by the director of the department. So if you guys say go with it, depending on if you have any qualifications to your recommendation, but if it's just a flat out, we recommend that we proceed with it, then it'll be up to the deputy director whether or not she wants to continue with it. Her indication to us has been that she'll follow the recommendation that you guys come up with.
Okay, and also, I think you just answered the question. It appears that the staff, namely the director, has the ability to say yes to this project from the get-go. It's just replacing a plaque and it's putting something else there. I believe currently there's no tree, so I'm trying to understand why is there a delay in bringing this forth to this commission or to the predecessor commissions, which would have been probably Parks and Recs. I talked to the director in August, and the impression I got is she didn't want this project to go forward. So I am kind of curious what your ultimate recommendation is with regards to this project.
Commissioner Maroka, if I may, I just wanted to jump in to answer at least the first part of your question. The delay in this is that we were trying to figure out the best method for moving this project forward. And so we've gone through a few different iterations with the family of different options that we could provide for them. One being considering whether this could be a path of history marker, for example. And so it was certainly not for lack of trying or for trying to push it down the road. It was just trying to see, because the city doesn't have a very clear program for this to fit into currently, we were trying to see, is there an existing program or opportunity available that this best fits with? And so it took a little bit of time. I believe a few months ago, we likely were ready to bring this, or at least getting close to, and then the commissions were consolidated. And so that obviously added an extra month or two. So it certainly wasn't by any means because any member of staff does not want this to move forward. The director is interested in hearing from the commission and wants to hear your input on it in order to make the determination.
Okay, so the recommendation of the staff is to approve this?
If I may also, I don't think that the recommendation, I think they're just presenting the idea to us. I don't know if there's directly a recommendation tied to it. I think we're just giving feedback in terms of what was presented to us.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question. Is there a recommendation of the staff? And you'll see when we go through the next part with the other projects, the same thing. Is there a recommendation of the staff? They spent time working up this proposal. I know they've been dealing with it since August. It sounds like, and Mayor Light apparently has spoken to the Villarino families on board with it, but I just want to know, is it the recommendation of the staff to go forward with this?
Based on the information that we know of the project so far, and that was presented this evening, there are no major concerns with moving forward with this. So if the commission did decide to move forward, depending on what conditions you set on that installation, staff would move forward to support that. We wouldn't bring forward an item that we necessarily weren't in favor of without at least outlining those concerns in the report. So the information before you is essentially what the project would entail and what we would support.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so I have a question. This plaque donation program that we have, it's kind of like a service that we're providing to the community, how they can, I guess, a memorial to their loved ones. And it doesn't really, it doesn't serve the broader community, it kind of just serves that one person, right? Like this tree that they want to put in, no one really uses that park. I've seen it, like it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of maintenance happening over there. So I'm wondering if I'm wondering if it's going to be maintained, put on the maintenance schedule, or what the greater sort of good is for putting that there, and yeah.
You can start.
Well, I was just going to jump in. Public Works has been consulted on this. So once it is installed, the main area of maintenance would be the tree. Public Works certainly would not install the tree until they verified that the irrigation system that is currently there is operational and functional. If it wasn't, the tree won't be installed until that's completed, or at least there's some sort of a irrigation plan in place. So, for the long term, we would make sure that there would be a little bit more upkeep to that facility, because we would essentially be adding a new amenity, for lack of better words, to the area.
I have a question regarding the type of tree that the proposal is asking to plant, an olive tree. Is that, it's not on the approved list. So again, I understand somewhat the symbolic nature of an olive tree, but are there any concerns with, planting that, any species, native species in that area that could potentially be impacted by that at all? Is there any concern for that?
Well, evidently, the olive trees are planted throughout Riviera Village, because that was Clifford's, the guy that originally planned the area wanted it to look like the French Riviera, which has a lot of olive trees. So I think there's a history of olive trees being able to survive in the area. Originally, there was an olive tree planted in 1969 along with the plaque that was installed. I don't know what happened with that tree. It's obviously not there now.
And why it wouldn't be an approved tree?
Oh, why? Well, that would be a question for, Parks. I'm not sure how they decided
Public Works.
which
That's
trees.
Yeah,
I mean, five is a pretty small number.
I've seen how the Public Works or how their contractor trims the olive trees, and that would be a huge concern. But I guess if it's a memorial tree, they might not trim it in the same way they trim city trees, but they don't look great after they're done with them.
Well, the other thing to consider, and when we get Mr. Villarino on the phone, he can talk to this. The family has a long history with caring about this park. They were instrumental in getting, community groups and businesses back in 1969 to donate both time and money to turn what was described as a dirt lot into this park. It would seem to me that as long as the family is around and the Riviera Village Association, the Business Improvement District that's there, has voted to approve this project ceremonially. So they're not providing funds for it, but they appear to have said that they like the idea. I would think that between the Business Improvement District, which obviously has an interest in maintaining a nice park as an entryway, to their business area, and this family's long-term interest, that they would, make up for whatever maintenance wasn't being done by the city. But I think Mr. Villarino should probably speak to that.
If I can fill in some of the history on it, since we actually do have 2 plaques in the museum that the family has previously donated. And you have in your materials item PA 241790, which is the text. So this family was heavily involved in the development of Riviera Village. The father was one of the members of the board over there. And the olive tree, to get to your question, was his dad asked, and I believe it's Ron who's on the phone, to come up with the drawings of what was going on. He came up with this logo that's been used for many, many years that includes the olive tree. It's in your materials, what it looks like. And that was the logo for Riviera Village for many years. So you have the ability to go to the museum and actually see the two plaques over there. And this is actually a really nice idea that the family's stepping forward to do. I don't know why the original donor rounds were removed. There's about 12 of them. And I don't think anybody was tracking that at that point, but the second plaque is actually replacing what used to be 12 round circles that went around that big circle.
I have a question. Is Torrance in any way, do they do any work whatsoever, since they own 60% of the property? They do any work whatsoever over there?
I don't know.
And then, so the Director of Public Works says it's okay, but have we checked legally? Because they own 60% of it, Torrance does. And so I'm just curious if legally there's any concern for Redondo, us doing something before they approve it first? I don't know, just asking a question.
Well, I think like we mentioned before, we won't do anything until all of the approvals are in place.
Mhm.
So it's really which comes first, the chicken or the egg. I mean, do you approve it first and then we get, them to say that they agree, or, do we, ask them to approve it first and then come to you? According to the diagram, which was included in the longer report that the Villarinos sent us, the portion of the park that includes the circle is completely city-owned.
And do we?
Now, I haven't verified that with the planning department or anyone else, but at least the Villarino family, I guess, has done some research, and they believe that that circle is completely in the city of Redondo Beach.
Got it. And are we also being asked to approve the wording of the plaque, or is that?
Well, I think that's an important discussion for you to have, because if you look at the criteria, it does say, number 6, the appropriateness of the content or message presented by the special donation item. So I do think that would be an important thing for you to discuss.
I guess, so it says substantial financial contributors, 1969, is that, are these people listed below from right now or from 1969?
From 1969. So the 12 names, the original plaque from 69 has the names of the 4 donors who gave, I think, more than $1,000. The 12 donors that were on the circular plaques gave either $250 to $500 or $500 to $999. Those 12 names are the names that are going on the new plaque.
That's the substantial financial contributors
Yes.
names. Okay.
And I think the preservation people would be interested in if they looked up some of those businesses from 1969. Some of them have been there for a while.
I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm missing something here. I'm wondering, I've lived here for 15 years, and I'm kind of I'm not making the connection between this park and this tree and this plaque and the town that I know. So I'm wondering if this can be rewritten to be more clear, because it looks like we're honoring Hollywood Riviera residential founder and developer. Is that, what are we trying to convey with this? That this is a piece of history? I'm just curious, like what do we want people to understand when they walk into this park and they see this tree and they read this plaque? Because I'm reading it and I'm not understanding.
Well, I think that would be a question for Mr. Villarino.
Okay.
It may be appropriate
And then this
time.
donated by the Villarino family rededication 2024, that's also on the plaque?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have any additional questions before we go to comments? Okay, I think we can go to public comment.
I think he meant the panelists,
Yeah,
Mr.
sorry.
Villarino.
Mr.
He is available.
Okay, can we,
He was talking before.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, I wasn't
Sorry.
sure. Okay. Hi, this is Ron Villarino. I'm the son of Joe Villarino, who was a merchant in Riviera Village for 50 years. I wanted to go back to some of the questions that were asked. One of them was about the tree. And the tree is a miniature olive tree. It's goes between 6 to 10 feet. It's not a huge olive tree like the ones that currently exist in Riviera Village downtown that was planted back in the 60s and early 70s by the Riviera Association that tied into the whole park and the theme of the saluting Clifford Reed and his Hollywood Riviera development and the whole atmosphere they tried to create. But anyway, it's a 6 to 10 foot. It is a fruitless. It won't drop berries or seeds or anything, so there's no debris from it. And once olive trees do get established in that area, I lived down there since 56 to 1986, I think it was. They do get established in that climate down there, and they do survive. So, you know, with some water help going on from the sprinkler system, I think it'll be fine. What we're trying to accomplish is something that's missing that was once there. It's gone, and we just would like to replace it, and that's our main concern. And the reason why is the merchants you see listed on that plaque, and by the way, the copy is not set in stone. I mean, I'm sure it can be ran through and modified if necessary or cleaned up grammatically. I'm not professionally doing this, so, but anyway, the whole purpose of it was back in the late 60s, that what happened was as consumers would come off the Palos Verdes Peninsula, they were passing Riviera Village because that triangle there was a dirt lot full of trash and weeds. And the merchants decided to get together with the Riviera Village Association and try to beautify it because the malls that were being built, that was a big thing back then. Malls were being built. All the shoppers off PV were going right by to the malls in Torrance and wherever. And that little downtown area of Riviera Village needed to be beautified and something to make it unique. And the Riviera Village Association at some point hired Walter Gruen, who was a famed architect for designing shopping malls, kind of helped them give them plans for an outdoor walking mall. That's what it kind of became. Even one of the roads was that in there. I can't remember the name of it. It's one that goes through the village there. That was, the city actually allowed a new road to go through to keep that flowing walking pattern. So in order to get people to stop, they went out there, all the merchants started off with, I think my dad donated some TV boxes from the 60s, those big old TV boxes, and they cleaned the whole thing up. And they started raising money with the Rotary Club and the Sportsman's Club and all these different organizations. And they took the money to the city and said, we want to beautify this. And they brought all that money to the city and helped develop that park. And they carried the theme, the Clifford Reed theme from Hollywood Riviera over into the village. They had an olive tree planted there. The existing plaque that does exist, that's still there, that was from 69. But the merchants that had raised the money and spearheaded the whole project, they had the little round plaques, little medallions that were in the aggregated cement, and over time disappeared. I don't know if, skateboarders ran over them or there were trip hazards removed by the city. We don't know. It's been a long time ago. So my brothers and I just happened to notice it when we were down there a few years back, and we're like, hey, where's all that? So we decided that we wanted to bring that history back and replace what was gone. That's our only intention here. And there's nothing broad or more than that was a little park that was brought together by merchants, and that was our intention. That is our intention. So I'm open to any questions you might have.
So this write-up was not on the original plaque? Is
No,
that correct?
there is a original plaque there. That's not the copy from it. The other plaques, there was 12 round medallion plaques that were, you can actually go to the park and you can see the round circles where they've been filled with cement
here it
now.
is.
That was how they recognized the merchants who developed the park and raised the money to put the park together. And I can't remember the amount they raised. It was something like quite a bit of money for back then. I think it was like 35 or 40,000 or something. Those 12 individual plaques, obviously, they were taken out or they were removed by theft or whatever. Those are being consolidated into the new plaque with the names, and then a little history of the park, how it came to be. And also, you'd mentioned that the design on there was by me. It wasn't by me. It was by my brother, Jeff, who was an aviation high school student. Actually, my dad asked him to design it and he donated it. So it was used for probably about 50 years in the village until they switched over to the logo that they now have. But it's that plaque information, the copy that you see that's kind of sketched out there, that draft, that is for the new plaque, including the history and then the names of the people that were on the round plaques that are gone now, the round medallions.
Does anybody have any additional questions for Mr. Villarino?
I would just like to add a comment. The aviation high school angle is actually a pretty important one. There's a lot of pieces of aviation high school that have been being erased from the city, and it would be nice to have another spot, even at the opposite end of the city, to recognize the contributions that school did to our community.
Existence of aviation high school, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that after this discussion, my biggest concern is this write-up here, and I think it really needs to be refined and tell the story that is, it sounds like he wants to tell, and rope in maybe some more historical points and why this is important, and maybe even talk about how, you kind of want it to be a point of inspiration for anyone who reads it. Wow, this is how wonderful a group of concerned community members came together and they made this happen. They made, they affected change for positive. Like, I really think that point needs to be driven home, and the historical points as well.
Okay. So do we want to take an attempt at making a motion? First of all, do we want to approve it as such as the presentation was presented today, or do we want to send something back to the city for consideration for revisal before we take a look at it a second time?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would suggest. That's what I would motion, especially this point. I don't know if we want to divide it up because there's a tree and there's a plaque.
We might have to make, I mean, again, depending on what the motion is, I think I would tend to agree with the revision of the language within the plaque. I don't think anybody, again, I'm speaking for myself, I don't know if I'm necessarily opposed to the idea. I think that the language written on the tentative plaque, like that probably needs to be refined. I also, just back to the city, I think it is possibly important just to clarify a couple things with Torrance, just for peace of mind for everybody too. Like, you guys are also doing an attempt to, facilitate this and make the recommendation and then present it to us for consideration. So I don't think that we want to go through, possibly a moot point to review this, right? Like, we want to just button everything with any kind of like hurdles that we might see. So even if it's just getting, whatever consideration or whatever establishment with Torrance to just make sure that there's no hurdles, that they don't want to have any input on the design or anything like that, right? Like, we don't want to have that come at the 11th hour of considering this, going through this, and then having somebody else come and say, yeah, we don't want that. So that would be my recommendation, is that if we could just iron out whatever we need with Torrance just for peace of mind, and then to come back with a revision of the language within the plaque. I think that's what my motion would be.
I think that's a good motion, and if I can put it in a different words,
Sure.
and this may be addressing to my colleague over here on my right, that I would move that we direct staff to work with the Villarino family on perfecting the language. If anybody wants to participate, we can add that in as the amendment, that we direct staff to communicate with the city of Torrance and get their understanding of it as well. And that would, I think, covers what you were saying.
Mr. Morocco, commissions don't direct staff, they make recommendations.
You asked what your recommendation was, you didn't have it.
So you're recommending that staff works with the Villarino family. You're not directing staff to do that.
Yes, I think just,
I would disagree with you, Mr. Margolis.
so I'm gonna interject for 1 second, guys. Like, and this is important to remember, right? Like, we're a volunteer advisory board, right? We're just making recommendations. I don't think we're directing anybody with anything, right? We're giving input. We're giving input. We're not admin heads. We're not anything like that. So again, I want to make sure that, you know, the vernacular and everyone's on the same page with it. So the recommendation, I think, would be that if the city can work with the Villarino family, make a revision of the language in which, you know, which would, you know, ultimately make the final iteration of the plaque. I think that would be the recommendation. And if that's okay, can we make that as the motion?
Yeah, the only question is, you still have the Torrance issue hanging out there.
Correct. So that's the secondary part of the motion, right? Also,
Isn't the Torrance part already in the process? You already talked, the assistant director was already communicating with Torrance?
I don't believe the conversation has already happened. We're happy to have that conversation before you make a final recommendation. If that's fine.
But that's going to happen regardless, right?
It will, yes.
Yeah, that's why I don't know if it needs to be in the motion, if it's already.
I think the thing is, though, is that if there was an absolute assurance from Torrance, then we're in business to discuss about, to have this, and we can say, okay, whatever our recommendation is, then the city can proceed accordingly.
Right.
But if there is an out with Torrance in terms of them wanting to approve final design, I don't think it's personally beneficial for us to go through this, for the Villarino family to discuss this with us, and then Torrance pull the rug from underneath everybody. So again, I think it might be fruitful if whatever, you know, I don't want to say concerns, but if there's, I think I would prefer getting like absolute assurance with Torrance that this can go before they pull the rug from underneath us, if that's possible. And if you're saying that we have to go at their discretion at the end of it, then.
Well, yeah, we'll certainly have that discussion with our Public Works Department. I don't know what absolute assurance means. I mean, I don't know if their city council has to.
There you go.
We have a policy that says our department director, if John LaRock, you know, has that same authority, then it probably will be very easy to do. So we'll investigate that.
We could make a motion just to approve it as it is. And then make a recommendation that the commission recommends the language, the verbiage be fixed, and that hopefully with the city of Torrance that works out.
Well, would you want that to come back to you?
Well, I mean, if it comes back, it's going to come back either way, right? I mean, if we approve it, it might not come back. It might just actually get done. Right?
So, okay, so I think I understand what you're trying. So regardless of what we, you know, I don't know if we're pushing this item along by saying, let's get Torrance is okay and then going, because ultimately we're just advising on the language. Do we want it there? Do we not? Right?
I think what we should do is actually focus on the language in the plaque. That was my original question.
Sure.
If we're looking to also approve the language in the plaque, I think that's the first step, because having that, then we can go to Torrance and say, this is what we would like to do in Redondo. How do you feel about that? You know, and get their expressed approval. You know, we should have something in writing from them.
I think if there's going to be a plaque on a portion of their park space, they're probably going to want to know what it says.
Yeah.
And we probably would also want to get the maintenance agreement between the two cities, because that may actually spell out some of the requirements that they do. I started off saying I didn't think that we needed to step into the discussion, so Commissioner McCauley's suggestion of just approving it, letting the staff then work with the city of Torrance to work out the language, at least moves the project forward. And I think the big controversy would have been the olive tree, but it's.
I also want to point out that usually when you do a donation plaque, it's very short. And so there's not a whole lot of discussion, but this is long and it serves a different purpose. And so if we're going to be putting this in bronze, and the city is going to be installing it, like my opinion is that we don't want people to be like, what? I don't know what this is trying to tell us. You know, it's important that a professional eye looks at it, reviews it, make sure it's telling the right story, you know, before we just say, yeah, put it in.
Yeah, well, I think, I agree, but I think also it's an exception that is going on here, right? Because for the directors, that's how this is all started. We're making an exception anyway by approving it or not. The thing about this plaque in particular is that, it has to go in that location. You can't put it somewhere else. And it does complement the other plaque that's already there. And so in seeing the two, the verbiage can kind of be clarified a little bit, I guess. But I think the intent of what the verbiage is saying does kind of serve the purpose of that location. Now, what I would like to see is the slide that had the list of our responsibility to look at the bullet points. Because one of them was the language, right? It was.
Yeah.
So
Can you project the screen? And I'm just, to your point about the complementary plaques, does it make sense to all of you to have the plaques on opposite sides of the circle, or would it make more sense to have them next to each other?
Because you might not be reading both as you're walking through.
I would put them on opposite ends. It depends on what the ultimate sign looks like. The other one has a certain font, and this one is going to have a completely different font. I don't know if this is like Arial, whatever, donated by the Villarino family, but like the whole thing just needs a little bit of a designer's touch, if you ask me.
So
I do agree with you, ma'am. I just want to let you know, I don't know if anybody can hear me. I do agree with what you're saying. So we're open to looking at that and cleaning it up.
Okay. So could we try to work on a motion then? So if we're okay with leaving the Torrance caveat out, because that's going to happen regardless, right? So if we want to make a motion to ask staff if you can work with the Villarino family to come back with a revision, do we want to give some points as a part of the motion? So it's not just try again and come back?
Yeah, and I also think that I've never created a bronze plaque before, but I'm wondering what the, can we just choose any font? Do we have to choose a font that they can print with? Like, there's a lot of questions. So, yeah, I'd be happy to work with them, but I think this is part of the public art.
No.
No, why are you in charge of it, this presentation?
Good question.
Oh, okay. I thought,
I'm a member of the Community Services Department.
okay.
Well, and it's also the historical piece of this is ultimately why it landed.
Oh, gotcha.
Because Gary also oversees our historical museum and.
Oh, I thought you were public art. No.
Both.
Both.
Okay, so you're public art. So this is essentially, I feel like this is also, a little bit of public art, if you ask me.
Well, it doesn't meet the public art definition of public art, but
aesthetically.
I see where you're going, yes.
Aesthetically, it should look nice.
I totally agree, and it was a comment that I made to the family as well.
Okay. Yeah, anything I can do to help, I would be happy to, but that would be something that's very important to me, that it looks nice and reads well.
Someone want to take an attempt at a motion?
This one actually has an interesting component to it, which is going to impact all of our work. At what level do we want to micromanage language, and whether we want to give the staff the discretion to iron out the issues if we decide to go forward with it.
Again, we're an advisory commission, right? So if we're a member of the citizenry and we look at a plaque and the plaque looks like phonetically it doesn't make sense, artistically it doesn't make sense, that's feedback, right? So we're just giving feedback in terms of that. So
I will say that I don't feel the need to micromanage this at all. I think that we have plenty of really smart people that will look this over before it's finalized. And we're just saying, okay, we're reading it and it's not quite making sense. And I know there's more here, there's more story here. We just need it to, before it's approved, it needs to tell the story it's supposed to, make more sense and, sort of be relevant, I guess. And beyond that, I don't need to read it. And
Chair, if I may, the ultimate approval for this, based on the policy, is that the Community Services Director approves it. So an alternate recommendation tonight, if you guys don't necessarily want to, wordsmith the wording, is you can provide input to staff, and then we can provide that to the director, and then she can wrap that into her final approval of this. On the flip side, if you would like us to return and have some alternate wording, we're happy to do that. Whatever you're comfortable with, but we just want to make sure that you also understand that the ultimate decision, the heavy weight of this, does not necessarily need to fall on your shoulders. We can provide that input to the director to then circulate that into the final approved project.
So then I have a suggestion for a motion. It's going to be a two-parter. The first one is that we recommend that we go forward with this proposal. And then once that passes, we can have a discussion about how do we want to present the wording component to staff to deal with. So if we're on board with this, I know the families talked about the cost that's associated with the bronze plaque does go up. So if we can at least get them so that they can start the discussions again with the city, I think that would be helpful in moving it forward. And then we can do the second suggestion that Deputy Director Orta suggested is, okay, these are some of the finer points that we need to deal with.
So your motion is to vote on having the plaque regardless of the language, the existence of it, and then the secondary motion would be the phonetical, the language as well as the design of it. Okay.
To move forward with this project. And then the second vote will be, these are some of the concerns we have with the language.
But would you say that you're comfortable to make a vote on the existence without knowing what the final design of it would be?
can you make a motion contingent on the language?
So that's what I'm saying is,
I would say, yeah, that's great, but the language needs, and the design needs to be addressed before, it's.
We vote on
That would be
yeah.
my input.
But is the language, in reading that, the appropriateness of the content, I don't see the appropriateness of the content changing much. It's more of grammatical, right?
It's the way it's written.
So if as it is now, I think it, for the applicant who's trying to do this, I think they've met all the criteria, except for maybe the final editing of the language, but I don't think, even in my opinion, just me talking, I don't think the appropriateness of the language is going to change too much. So I would feel comfortable voting to approve it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just want to make sure the notes that we talked about here, were presented to the Community Services Director. And I mean, I think that they want the same things. I mean, I don't.
And I'm willing to have myself or somebody else on this dais sit down with the Community Service Director and iron out the language. It probably should be you, Mar, because you have the strongest interest in wanting the language.
I was an English major. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be a barrier to entry when it comes to putting stuff in bronze and on city property, I think.
You're going to be getting them with the path of history markers when they start coming through as well.
You seem very thorough, so.
Okay, so can we try to work on the motion and perhaps I can say, like, let's try to give some feedback as well.
Okay.
So can we make a motion that says to please, consider revisions for the design of this plaque, including, fonts that are consistent with existing plaque fonts, designs that kind of correlate with existing plaques in the immediate vicinity, as well as possibly consolidating some of the language in here to kind of read more concisely, like this is kind of a lot of information.
Yeah, I think it needs to tell a clear story. I don't think it's accomplishing that, so.
So with those kind of points, can we get a revision of the actual language and then continue this item for a subsequent meeting with the new revision?
Is that the motion?
Can this be, can the motion be a conditional approval, subject to the revision of wording for clarity and font design?
That could be a substitute motion, but again, I think, as we spoke, a couple minutes ago, I think the apprehension is that, do we want to approve something without knowing what it's going to look like first, right? So then, we can vote on that as well, but
Doesn't her motion accomplish what we were trying to accomplish?
Conditional approval.
we can, we can make a conditional. So do we want to vote on conditional approval, that everyone's okay with the idea with the contingency that we want to see the final revision before?
So we approve it, but we reserve the final approval of the language before you print it onto the bronze. Right?
And the
You wanna see
design?
that?
So the last point that I'll add is that I gave, just so we don't have to keep making the same motion. So the other last point of my motion that's on presently is that we will conditionally approve the existence of this plaque going, with the condition that we have these, and then we have a final vote on the final design.
Don't forget the olive tree.
And also, do we want to talk about anything with the olive tree, or
Oh, they can plant that once they
I'm
get
okay.
Torrance's approval.
I'm okay with the olive tree too. So that's the motion. Should we repeat something? I know that's,
May I ask a question?
sure.
So in terms of the emphasis in the text, in my mind, there are 3 topics that are currently being addressed. One is the origin of that logo, okay, and how that logo came to symbolize the park and the greater Riviera Village. 2 would be the story about how the park was transitioned from a dirt lot into a park through community contributions. And then obviously the third one is the missing contributors. Are all 3 of those equally important, or are any one or more 2 of those more important than the others, especially when you're commenting on the length of it?
Well, I think the contributors are very straightforward. They're just names. So I think just me reading it, having no idea what this is, I was still having no idea what this was trying to convey to me, what information. And so I don't have a problem with the length of it if it fits on the right size plaque or whatever, but it just needs to read much better.
Okay.
To answer your question, for me, the most important part of it are the contributors, right? Because that's what went missing.
Right.
Okay, so to me, that should be the focus of this. I have no problem with the symbol of the tree and all of that. That's, to me, not important. Let's just say, to me, the important part are highlighting these financial contributors. And then the story, being secondary to that or supporting that. So, and, somehow these names got buried a little bit at the bottom. And when I first looked at it, I had that same reaction, I don't know, I thought I was looking at or needing to focus on the contributors, and then this other story, which respectfully didn't make sense sequentially or just wording wise. So that's my,
So are you okay with the 4 biggest contributors being on a different plaque than the 12 smaller contributors?
How many plaques are we proposing?
Well, so there's one plaque that's currently there that has the names of the 4 largest, of the 4 contributors that gave the most money, $1,000 or more, right? And then the 12 that went missing, so, I mean, are on the second plaque, and the plaque, the text doesn't include, like, would you want it to include the story about the missing medallions, you know,
I
that they
see,
were.
so it's trying to do 2 different things. It's trying to, it's trying to, you know, re-acknowledge, I guess, on a plaque, these people that they were on, and then also tell the story. Okay. I didn't understand that, yeah.
The 4 original contributors, are they the organizations or are they the committee? On the original
They're
plaque,
on the,
first plaque.
on the one on the left.
Yeah,
So it's the Riviera Village Association, the Riviera Village Rotary Club.
the association, the groups. They're not individual.
They're 4 groups, yeah,
Yeah, they're not people, but they're the groups.
right.
Okay.
But some of the 12 are also groups.
Mhm.
Yeah, I saw that.
Was there a fountain there at one time?
No one told me there was. There was, Mr. Villarina, do you know? There was originally a tree planted in the circle, right?
Looks like a
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, there was no fountain. There was an olive tree that was there. Initially that I think even the photo in the, I believe the photo in the museum, I think they're digging, showing, you know, like putting the tree, I can't recall what it looks like, but there was a tree there. Yeah, but no fountain that I recall. And you know, like, I don't know if you heard me earlier, if you want to refine the wording, you know, that's fine. We can work on it and improve it. And it's just on a Word doc with a picture on it. It's not a graphic design or anything. It's just to get the information over to you guys. That doesn't have to be the actual design of it, but if it's compatible with existing design, like I believe that gentleman mentioned, I think that would be suitable since it was back in '69 if they have a similar look. But yeah, things can be looked at and worked on.
So do we still have the motion out? Do you want me to repeat the motion or should we?
Repeat it. I don't think you
Okay.
got a second, so might as well repeat it.
You know, if I could just, this conversation's been, I think, educational, and I think it was referred to as, you know, an opportunity for us to look at as far as how we're going to work on these things. And the simple question that I see here is whether we're willing to recommend that the director approve a special request. The resolution outlines what they're allowed to do, and this conflicts with that. So are we willing to accept or recommend that they approve it? And yes, there's a tree. I've been actually, in my mind, that's the only thing that's going to get me to not approve this. It's not a native tree. I recognize that they've planted it in a lot of places, but it's not native to Southern California. It's considered an invasive species. So that's the one thing that I'm having trouble with. So for me, I would like to make a motion, because I don't believe that there's a second yet on the original, a motion to support the special request made by the Villarino family. I would like to request that the Recreation and Community Services Director work with any member of the commission and the Villarino family to remedy the situation in relation to the language. I think that the commission's been pretty upfront that it could be a little bit more positive, inspirational, and recognizing the history of the land. And I would like to make this motion contingent upon the approval of the city of Torrance. And that would be my motion, I think that staff is more than capable to work with any member of the commission that wants to work on the language, as well as with the Villarino family. He's made it very clear that he's not married to that language. But I think that our question is somewhat simple, is whether we want to support the special request.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Well done.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Villarino.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
All right. I'll be checking out now. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item J, public hearings.
Before we actually go on, I do want to note that we're not getting the YouTube feed that actually had him on the screen, and I don't know if that's something we have the ability of doing, so we're not seeing what the public is seeing.
Okay, so you're not.
Because he was on YouTube and talking.
Yeah, they're on Zoom.
Oh, Zoom?
Yeah.
I found it on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, I think that when you're on YouTube, you can hear the panelists, but you can't visually see them. So were you on YouTube? Were you able to?
I was able to see him while he was talking,
Okay.
but
Was that via Zoom or YouTube?
that was YouTube.
Okay.
The live broadcast of
Yeah.
the meeting. So you're
Yeah,
just
we-
seeing what the public is seeing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
His
Those
own-
guys, I guess.
His own camera.
Is he here?
Yeah.
But it's interesting, something we can definitely look into. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Moving on to item J, the public hearings. Item J1, a public hearing considering an exemption declaration and certificate of appropriateness applications for the rehabilitation of 5 residential structures located within a designated historic district pursuant to Chapter 4, Title 10 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code.
Stephen.
I'm still trying to pull up the presentation.
Okay.
Do you have to press the present button on this side over here? That's on my computer.
Who's that? Whose is that one?
You're on the PC. You need to log into your presentation?
I just need to display it on this. I don't have I don't have anything. Should I see someone behind me then?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Gang. I'll be presenting the consideration of an exemption declaration and certificate of appropriateness application for the rehabilitation of 5 structures on 216 and 218 North Catalina Avenue. The subject site is located east of North Catalina Avenue and is zoned for low-density residential R3A. The properties to the east, north, west are also zoned R3A, and the properties to the south are zoned RMD, medium-density residential, and PPRO, which is Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. The project consists of 2 parcels, 216 North Catalina, which is a 6,000 square foot property and contains an existing 2-story craftsman apartment building with 4 units, along with 2 detached rear cottages. The property at 218 North Catalina consists of a 1-story Queen Anne style duplex at the front and a 2-story apartment building at the rear. Here's an image of both properties off of Catalina Avenue. The Queen Anne style duplex is on the left and the 2-story craftsman apartment building is on the right. The project at 216 North Catalina will consist of repainting the stucco, cleaning and painting the siding, refurbishing various items such as the stairs, railings, chimneys, and windows. The roof of the southern cottage is to be replaced with brown shingles. Additionally, the proposed rooftop mechanical equipment will be screened with wood slat fencing and a wood cap. Here are the elevations of the rear cottages, which will be receiving exterior refurbishing. The property at 218 North Catalina, which contains the Queen Anne style home at the front, and the rear cottage, or the rear two-story apartment building, will also receive similar treatments such as repainting the exterior, cleaning and repainting the eaves, gutters, replacing the non-original openings with new openings as required by the building code, redesigning the rear gable roof, and new mechanical equipment in the courtyard at the rear apartment unit. Here's a closer view of the Queen Anne duplex from the side. Please note that the existing roof height is only 6 feet in height within the interior, hence one of the reasons why the roof pitch is changing to accommodate a standard 8 feet plate height, but the roof will still be below the existing roof ridgeline of the existing residence. Furthermore, the new gable would be symmetrical, which is more compatible with the original building. Here are the elevations of the two-story apartment building at the rear of 218 North Catalina Avenue. It should be noted that this specific structure is not considered historic and is not held to the same historic standards as the other buildings in this project. Staff has identified the standards that most closely relate to the proposed project, which includes compliance with the Secretary of Interior standards, that the site will remain a residential use as originally constructed, distinctive features and materials will be preserved, replacement of all deteriorated materials with like-for-like replacements. Any inappropriate alterations from the past will be replaced with compatible fixes, and the new roof element of the Queen Anne style home at 218 North Catalina will be below the existing roof ridgeline and therefore compatible with the original building. In addition to the Secretary of Interior standards, the city's preservation ordinance states that the commission shall issue a certificate of appropriateness only when it meets the above 3 criteria. Staff is of the opinion that the proposed alterations would not interfere with existing character defining features of the historic district. Lastly, the project meets the zoning and development standards set by the base zoning district because no new square footage is proposed, no proposed changes of the numbers of stories, and the proposed building height of the Queen Anne style duplex is still below the required 30 feet height limit of the base zoning district. Based on the findings, staff recommends that the Public Amenities Commission adopt the exemption declaration and approve the certificate of appropriateness applications for the rehabilitation of 5 residential structures within the designated historic district located at 216 and 218 North Catalina Avenue. This concludes staff presentation, and the property owners and staff are available for any additional questions.
I have a couple of questions. And I talked to you before we started about what the process is, and I think it would be helpful for all of us who are new to this process, as well as, I guess you said you were new as well. The condition assessment and treatment and the budget and the managed maintenance plan, that gets proposed, you said, by the applicant, correct?
Correct.
And does the city do any review of that before it presents to us? Or if the city reviews it, does it suggest changes before it's presented to us?
That's a good question. I actually don't know if the city staff is reviewing the application in that manner when we receive it. Do you know if the Sorry, he's the applicant.
The architect or the owner?
The old architect. We worked with Stacy Kinsella, who was your preservation planner over the last 6 months or so. So to the extent that she knows of reviews, but I'm not sure the extent of the formal review. The Mills Act is a tax credit, and you need to have a 10-year maintenance plan. And so that's what we've provided. And it's supposed to use, an appropriate amount of funds. They'll be doing a lot of work up front in the first year. So that's where a lot of the money is expended to do the rehabilitation. And then there's ongoing maintenance.
Okay, so when we approve the staff recommendation and go forward with it, are we signing off on the assessment, the maintenance plan, the budget, or is that something that we're just looking at the overall concept of it?
Overall concept, but you're mainly, from my understanding, is you're mainly looking at whether the design of the project meets the certificate of, let's see, I forget the name of the term, the COA analysis and the preservation ordinance requirements.
Okay, and then from here, does it go to the city council? Does it go to the planning commission? Who's the next step from?
No, this is the last stop for this project. Essentially, after tonight, the staff will process the Mills Act contract if we have any on the back end. But this is essentially the last stop for this project.
Okay, my last process question is, it looks like on the resolution that you've attached that there is like paragraphs 2 through 12 standardized language that goes into all of these considerations that we're going to be doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I just had one comment, just more on procedure as well. I think we should have opened up the public hearing before we received testimony from any member of the public, which probably should have begun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I could be wrong. I think staff.
Because this is public hearing, right?
Okay. So I don't know how we would go back and do that, or if we want to make a motion to enter into a public hearing. I would make that motion.
I would second that motion. There's a process, I think, on the agenda that.
Yeah, you're supposed to open the public hearing. Okay, we can make a motion. So all in favor to open the public hearing?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Do we have any additional questions?
I got a question since I'm ignorant here. Explain the funding process for all this in the Mills Act. I'm not familiar. If maybe the architect could explain it to folks like myself.
Actually, then the city submits it to the county, and the county does a calculation. And so there is a deduction of your property taxes. And as you know, each city, some of it goes to the school, some of it goes to the city. So there are technically, those are deductions of tax revenues from different departments for different sectors. Some are from the county. And
With the caveat to preserve historic properties.
Yeah. I'll do some research. I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
And then the Mills Act is actually a 10-year contract that's renewed every year for 10 years. So it kind of commits people to, you can't just suddenly do the bad thing without being penalized severely.
Great. All right, appreciate that so much.
So I read all the attachments for this and looked at the architectural plans, and I'm familiar with both of these buildings. I know someone who walked through the apartment building and commented on the amazing built-ins, which I think are being taken out to increase the size, which is super unfortunate, but I know this hearing doesn't deal with the interior. What I did notice is every opportunity, you guys took every opportunity when you're removing like a non-original window to put in a wood window. And I didn't really see a whole lot that you've changed aside from the ADU. So I mean, I think that you're really just sprucing up the exterior is what it kind of looks like. And going through all this and reading the attached documents, and the fact that you've worked with the city staff, I am sort of wondering what it is that we're supposed to be looking for in this, because I love old buildings. I always have. I've seen a lot of them taken down and whatnot, and I don't see any concerns here really. And I know you've gone through lots of plan checks. I assume I don't know, you gave them a set, they came back, told you to fix some things, you came back. So it's been a process. And the reason why we're seeing it here today is because the city staff determined that it was at a place where we could look at it and they would be comfortable if we today said, you know, like move it along, basically. So.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off what Commissioner Lang was saying too, like I actually have restored a Craftsman. I'm actually in the process of finishing a Craftsman remodel. So I'm pretty aware with, you know, kind of architectural points and understanding, you know, things that are kind of historic, but also things that aren't historic with it. I think based on like looking at the design of it, pretty much you're beautifying it for the most part. I think the thing that was kind of presented in the presentation is that, you're not changing the pitch of the roof at all. You know, I think it's still, it's not a shed roof, it's a hip roof. No, it's not.
It's just in the back.
Yeah, it's just,
of this one. Yep.
yeah.
That one.
I think that, you know, it's already gone through plan check. I think that nothing seems to be out of the historical nature of what a Craftsman is. Like you're not, I don't think that there's anything.
Well, if I may, I have a question actually regarding the fence at the front of the property, which to me does not appear to be a Craftsman style fence, and that was the one thing that sort of stood out.
Is that?
Let's see the,
You can show
It's the
photograph.
Craftsman.
view.
Yeah.
So that fence, yeah, the one on the right.
Are you talking about the metal fence or
The
the
gate.
walls?
I think
Yeah.
there's a discussion in on the maintenance plan about that fence as well.
What did it say?
So I know in the past,
page
you know,
107, I
having
think.
served on the Preservation Commission, you know, we look at items like this, you know, when it comes time for, you know, renovating the exterior, we have an opportunity to then address design elements that don't fit with the style of the house or the property that we're looking at. So my question is, when was this fence added? And, you know, I'm not an architect or a designer, so, you know, I'm just questioning whether this fence is appropriate for the style of the house.
The fence caught my eye too.
I think we put in to paint it. It's partly a retaining wall, so the fence would only be the upper, you know, half of it. I mean, you're welcome to, if you want to recommend that the city have us relook at the front fence, that would be okay too. I think we plan to paint it and it could go away some, but not change it.
Is it wrought iron?
Oh, if you're talking about just the metal fence or the
Yeah.
concrete?
Is it just wrought iron?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're welcome to look at that.
I don't believe, is 218, the apartment, not historic? Is that was part of the presentation? It's not considered historic.
216, it's only the building in the back of 218, the two-story apartment building behind the Victorian that's not historic.
That's not historic, okay.
So, you know, it was there at the time of landmarking. Whether or not it's inappropriate, you know, we don't want it to look ugly either. And, you know, we can talk to ownership that you felt that something should be done. I don't know if you're more speaking of the concrete block, which we agree needs to be painted out, or, you don't want to see the concrete block pattern. That may take plastering even.
I have another question along the same lines of the fencing. So in the front, on this picture, we see the two handrails on either side, and there's no railing down the middle. And I know code has changed and whatnot, and are you going to have to put one down the middle, or?
At this point, no, we actually have not finished a building and safety plan check. There is a state historic building code. We have to make a judgment about safety, and, I have to make a decision about liability. And so-
They have to make that decision,
Yeah,
not you.
Right, and so the building and safety will look at it with us.
And if they determine that
We'll
you
have
need
to put a rail down the middle. that's
so most likely you would just be doing the same design. So I know that this is a development for someone, and so I know cost. They're always everyone's always looking at cost, right? But I guess the question is, I don't know if you're required to copy the existing railing on either side, but I know that sometimes you can get like a pre-made railing, and I guess that would be part of the concern, is that, it's like what's cheapest and quickest.
Right, and, I'm the architect, and I have to defend the appropriate thing, and luckily historic preservation gives me some, extra ammunition. And we have a representative of ownership who's listening to these comments, so I'm sure that we haven't run into that kind of problem working with.
I'd like to add to that. My understanding, the building code typically requires handrails for staircases 3 steps or more.
It looks like there's like 4 maybe.
On the right side?
I'm actually talking about the staircase going up to the building.
Oh, okay.
From the sidewalk?
No.
From the porch.
Yeah, from like that
right up
courtyard
here.
area.
So right now, we're not showing that we're having to add
But you could put like a wrought iron handrail to
existing, we're not really, all we're in a way, it's a maintenance project almost overall. And to what extent that triggers.
On the exterior.
Yeah.
So I have another process question. Maybe the commissioners who were on preservation or the staff can answer it. The next project is a more material alteration that we're going to be looking at. This one doesn't sound like there's much alterations. What's the distinction between a minor alteration that just a subcommittee signs off on versus something like this project? Is there a line between the two?
Well, so let's just say, for example, if I were to make a motion, that, we approve the certificate of appropriateness subject to changing the fence to be more appropriate with the style of the house. So that could come back to the minor alterations subcommittee because it's just a fence. And we can look at that, and it's a quick thing. We just have a quick meeting for it and
then
set that up quickly.
My understanding of this project was it was brought to the minor alterations subcommittee, and the Queen Anne style duplex roof pitch was, I think, one of the key things that they wanted the bigger commission to look at. And it wasn't considered minor in there as at that point.
Well, because I was on that committee, so the reason why we wanted the entire commission to look at it is because it was a big project, right? It was the whole thing rather than, a small thing like a fence or one window, something like that. So we needed the whole commission to.
I have another question about that. So say you start construction on this roof, right? Lifting a roof, that's gonna change the exterior structure. You're gonna somehow have to bring those walls to meet that new roof height. Is there somewhere, is the whoever's doing the inspections, are they looking for the quality of the aesthetic? Or like, what if you get halfway down, raising this plate height and it's getting expensive and we need to start, just patching things? Like who ultimately is like looking at the final product, or like as it's being altered and being like,
Inspectors would, they would look at the plans and the proposals and to make sure that they're conforming with what's the final stamp plans. Like, once the perforated stamp plans are, the inspectors will go through and then they'll start to look at everything to make sure that it conforms with building safety code.
And then I'd like to add that if there is, say for example, on site, it's different and the inspector sees that it's different, they won't pass it and it'll go back to planning to see why it's different. And then we'll have to make the call whether or not needs to come back to the commission, or, what changes need to be made or kept.
yeah, because I mean, I guess I definitely understand that, like, there's a ton of new construction going on, and so there's people that are inspecting new construction all day long, but I don't know how often they're inspecting historical properties that are having these, but I guess there's plenty of them here in
Yeah, it's
Redondo,
not too
so-
much, but for them, I
Yeah.
think it's merely as long as the plans match what they're out there
Yeah.
for, then they can continue with their inspection. But if they differ, then they have to stop and then it goes back to planning.
Okay.
And what's the time frame we're looking at? If you get our approval today, what is anticipated you will actually start the work and complete the work?
There's a schedule. They want to start right away as soon as we get plan check approval. The way the tax break works, actually, the city has a December 31st deadline each year. And then it happens the following fall if processed by the county in time. And so the first tax credit wouldn't occur until next following year.
So
But they want to start they'll start the project anyway,
and you think it'll be done by the end of next year?
most likely, yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask another question? How long have you been in this phase of like plan check and?
Well, we started probably 9 at the beginning of the year.
So
Or
it's
just before.
a significant
We
amount of
wanted to-
time.
And then we need to have the Mills Act in by, everybody's saying by the end of May in order for it to get handled somehow this year. And we went through a couple of no quorums, but
So this takes
That's why
longer
it's May
than,
31st.
okay.
That's right.
But we appreciate it. And, I've enjoyed working with the city of Redondo Beach for a long time on preservation issues. And actually 20 years ago, we looked at the Arcadia stairs and see if they could be repaired for the city. But I see that was back in the news 20 years later. But so anyway, I appreciate your guys'
Okay.
review.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the commission before we go to public comment?
I just wanted to ask, how quickly do you think you could come back with a new fence design?
I think that's up to you.
I suppose, is this a monthly meeting?
We have a
Well, it would be, we would, I would,
Or committee.
I would say that, for the fence part of it, that could go to the minor alterations subcommittee, so we don't need to wait until the December meeting.
Okay, well, let me, put it together and, we could have, we're not gonna, the project won't start before the first of the year probably because of the building and safety, so,
Fair enough. Thank you.
thank you.
I did have another question. Are we supposed to administer an oath to anybody giving testimony here? Is that something that, because it says it on the
It does say that.
agenda.
I did see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, in the public hearing.
Yeah, no, my understanding is that's not the case.
Okay.
All right, do we have any public comment?
There are no e-comments or attendees for this item.
Okay, and then we're gonna close the public hearing and then we'll see if we can get a motion for this. Does anybody want to?
Do we need to vote to close the public hearing?
Oh,
I've seen the council do it, that's why.
Dana, do we?
Do we have to if there's no one waiting?
Yes.
Okay. I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then do we want to make a motion to, somebody want to make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness?
I'll take a crack at it.
I think you have to read the whole thing, right? Dana, okay.
Oh, boy, where is that?
That's why. Yeah. to
Okay,
make
the
a motion.
resolution,
Both resolutions.
both resolutions. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution of the Public Amenities Commission of the City of Redondo Beach, California, approving a certificate of appropriateness for the rehabilitation of 3 residential structures in a designated historic district and adopting an exemption declaration for the property located at 216 North Catalina Avenue pursuant to the requirements of Chapter 4, Title 10 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code. And 216 was the one with the fence? Yes, right?
Yeah.
Contingent, can I say contingent on returning with a fence appropriate for the style of the Craftsman House to come back to the minor alteration subcommittee for approval. And a resolution for the Public Amenities Commission of the City of Redondo Beach, California, approving a certificate of appropriateness for the rehabilitation of 2 residential structures in a designated historic district and adopting an exemption declaration for the property located at 218 North Catalina Avenue pursuant to the requirements of Chapter 4, Title 10 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code.
I'll second that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right.
Do you have to sign something now, or is that? I think the resolution has your name on there.
Just have to sign something. I don't think so. Okay, moving on to item J2, a public hearing considering an exemption declaration and certificate of appropriateness application for a rear addition at the designated historic property located at 305 North Francisca Avenue. We will officially open the public hearing regarding item J2.
Bless you.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Gang. I'll be presenting the consideration of exemption declaration and certificate of appropriateness application for a rear addition at 305 North Francisca. The project site is located west of North Francisca Avenue and is zoned R3 low-density multifamily residential. The properties to the east, north, and south are also zoned R3, and the properties to the west are zoned commercial. The existing site is 4,326 square feet and contains an existing single-family Craftsman California bungalow residence that was constructed around 1910. The residence consists of an 808 square feet single-story main residence with a 298 square feet detached garage and a rear deck that is being proposed to be removed as a part of this project. The proposed project includes a 1-story, 300 square feet addition. The existing hip roof will be extended to become an open gable facing the rear yard. A new master suite addition will also include a 137 square foot rear wooden exterior deck. The wood siding will slightly be wider than the existing siding so that the new addition can be differentiated from the original home. Character defining features of this residence include horizontal wood siding, wood trim surrounds, decorative exposed rafter tails, and an off-center covered entry porch with the street-facing gable. Here's an additional angle of the existing residence. This is a photo of the existing rear wood deck that is being proposed to make room for the new addition and new deck. Staff has identified the standards that most closely relate to the proposed project, which includes compliance with the Secretary of Interior standards, that the site remains a residential use, key features will be preserved, the proposed addition can be removed without affecting the original residence, the form and integrity of the original home is unimpaired, and the street-facing elevation is left unchanged. Lastly, the project meets the zoning requirements by meeting the site setbacks, outdoor living space requirement, and the building height for the zoning district. In addition to the Secretary of Interior standards, the city's preservation ordinance states that the commission shall issue a certificate of appropriateness only when it meets the above criteria. Staff is of the opinion that proposed alterations would not interfere with the existing character defining features of the historic district. Based on the findings, staff recommends that the Public Amenities Commission adopt the exemption declaration and approve the certificate of appropriateness application for rear addition to the designated historic property located at 305 North Francisca. This concludes staff presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
I have a question, 2 questions actually. One of the pictures you showed had a tree in the backyard by the deck that's being removed. Do you have to remove the tree as well to do whatever they're planning on doing with the property?
Let's see here. This tree, yeah, look at the aerial and see if I can see it.
It's hard to tell where the trunk is.
Yeah, let me take a quick second and look at the existing aerial on the site plan.
They don't have that in their, I guess maybe they don't need to include it if it's in the backyard.
Yeah, they just usually give the plot plan and then the existing landscaping.
If you can go back one slide, I think it was in the plans.
In the site plan, I didn't.
That's not the. Oh. It looks
It's
like a
not-
different-
Yeah, I don't see it in here.
No,
Let
it's-
me see
No, I
the.
thought it was
Not
this
in the
front one,
site
sorry.
plan.
But if you look at the site plan, you see the existing landscape included that.
Most likely, that tree is probably going to come out.
Yeah, the tree isn't being shown on any of the site plans for the project. I'm unsure if it, I'm unsure where the trunk is in location to the rear addition based on this image.
And do we know when the rear deck was installed?
We don't know when, I don't know when the rear deck was installed on for this project.
Is that tree, is that the end of the property from the pictures?
This is on the rear of the property, near the end here. I have an aerial. Let's see if I can see
And so
the
the
tree.
tree's hidden by the porch?
Yeah, it looks like, based on the aerial imagery, it looks like the tree is going to be located just around
Towards that corner?
here. Yeah, around here. It's not, there's a palm tree back here, but this is, the tree that we're referencing is going to be located around this area here. So will have to be removed. Will likely have to be removed.
But I don't think we have purview over that. We can't
Correct.
tell a homeowner that they can't take down a tree on their own property.
Correct.
Unless it's a heritage tree.
Unless it's been designated as a historical tree, that's correct.
This, yeah,
And
as
it's
far as my knowledge,
unclear,
it's not.
and homeowners, I think they have to nominate a tree if it's on their property.
I had another question. You identified in one of the papers that this is known as the Mahan House. And Percy and Lita were the ones living there in the 1920s. Do we know anything about the family or any historical? Because I didn't see anything that talks about how this property ended up being on the historic Register of Historical Sites, but do we know anything about the family and why it's called there? Did they build it?
Unfortunately, I don't have any information on the Mahan, on the family.
Piece in here.
I have a question pertaining to the exterior. I think you'd mentioned that the siding for the addition is going to be differentiated from, is there a particular reason again why?
From my understanding, it's to differentiate the historical significance of the original home from the new addition, and then it would allow for, essentially, if anyone wanted to remove the new addition in the future, it's very clear that distinction in the building where the the old historic home begins and the new addition ends. And it would allow for adjustments to the new addition a little easier, I imagine.
Wouldn't it be easier just to have a copy of the site plans that were approved to differentiate if someone wants to revise it? I guess I'm thinking from a standpoint of consistency, right? Like if it's going to be, if you can point out a historic home and say, okay, we can clearly tell that that's the addition visibly as opposed to architecturally, right? So I'm just trying to understand, like,
I feel like it must, and you might know a little bit better, I feel like it's to somehow acknowledge that that's not the original structure, and maybe so you can't pass it off as being the original structure or something.
Well, I
do you
don't
know?
know why that was.
It's a requirement though, isn't it?
But it is a requirement.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. It's interesting. It would be interesting to know that answer, but.
because it almost seems like, because this is, the Mills Act stuff is entirely on the purview of the exterior, right? So if you're visibly showing that it's an addition, it's not like, I guess to me, it just seems like you're getting away from the point of it, right? Even if it's just minute like that, and we don't want to particularly nitpick at this, but it is just, I think that was a part of your presentation that kind of stood out to me, was that, you purposely want to differentiate the addition versus what's the existing dwelling, so.
Yeah, I don't have a reason from the property owner on why. I think the main onus was that the front elevation is not changing, but why the exterior needs to be different from the side, I don't know.
That is a requirement that is set by the state, I believe, one of the requirements. But how they came up with that's what I think she's asking. Like, how did that ever come to be? Why that is a requirement?
Yeah.
But for our purposes, we just need to know that it has to be differentiated in order for it to be approved.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so,
Yeah.
perfect, okay.
I don't know if Commissioner Caldwell has anything you wanted to add on.
No, I think from my perspective, once it's narrowed in the back, it meets those elements that it doesn't, what was the term? It retains the essential elements of the home that make it significant, and it doesn't detrimentally alter the exterior architectural features. Because from the side and from the street, you're not seeing anything back there. And we talked about that regularly in the Preservation Commission about what that, the street appeal or what you would take from that architectural home and historic home from the street level, and what you can see and what you, I would say, gain as a community by maintaining that. And so we always tried to, whenever possible, work with the homeowners, because it's, as you probably know, it's very difficult to invest in these homes and maintain that historic look. So we always tried to encourage that whenever we could.
I think it's a very conservative addition.
Had they, if they went up, that would be clearly not allowed? From the-
Yeah, when you materially alter it from the street level,
Because
and you can start to
it.
see that,
Okay.
that's when we start to ask, well, okay, does it blend within the historic look of the home and the architectural take on the home? So again, I would point out for those that merge their commissions, one of the really beautiful things about the Preservation Commission is that we actually had people with very specific architectural experience. And emerging those commissions, it's hard to maintain that. And so I definitely was not the expert in architecture that was on there. No, I was not. So I valued having that on the Preservation Commission because it was an area of expertise that we relied on.
So when the city does a historic survey, do they mark what the changes are on the properties when it presents it in the materials?
I do believe they do, because I know that, and you're doing an excellent job, by the way. Stacy loved, the community loved the historic aspects of our community, and would do fantastic presentations like this, where they talk about the history of the home and they talk about exactly what we were working with. So I do believe that they continue to track these things and the history of the renovations that are made.
Because I guess that would be my question is, who at the city level has the knowledge base to look at a home like this and a homeowner that wants to make an addition? Are they just looking at the Mills Act and sort of checking boxes as they go? Or do they have, like a broader
Yeah, so right now,
understanding of historical home styles and,
Yeah, so right now, staff is really directed by the preservation ordinance. And so we're relying on the preservation ordinance, but in terms of experience of historic on staff, we have, for example, our director has a lot of experience for historic. We've just had a lot of turnover this last month with staff. And so in terms of getting folks in front of the Public Amenities Commission, I'm going to be your only guy for a couple of months here until we get everyone else on board. We just hired, I think, two new staff, and then we lost 4 in the last 3 months. So we're kind of dealing with a pretty high turnover right now, but we're stabilizing. Everyone's happy. We're all good now.
and this is in building or planning?
It's only in planning.
Planning, okay.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that this project, like the previous project, started a long time ago?
Correct. Yeah. We were trying to get this one done in September, and North Catalina we're trying to get done in August.
Right.
Okay.
Do we have any additional questions from the commission before we go to public comment? Do we have any members of the public?
There are no e-comments or attendees for this item.
Okay, then with that, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Does somebody want to make a motion on the resolution?
Okay, I'll do it.
Since you read the other
You
two
did
as
the
well.
other Thank you. I move to approve the resolution of the Public Amenities Commission of the City of Redondo Beach approving a certificate of appropriateness application for a rear addition and adopting an exemption declaration for the designated historic property located at 305 North Francisca Avenue pursuant to the requirements of Chapter 4, Title 10 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to item K, items continued from previous agendas. Do we have any items continued from previous agendas?
No, not that I'm aware of, but you did, Commissioner Morocco did want to bring up the committee discussion, I believe.
Yes. So I am the only person that served on both historical and library and all the other committees that you form deal with it. So I've given some thought as to what would be a good blending of those two commissions that have merged into you. And I think it would be nice to have a bringing history to the community committee that deals with the issues of the museum, any outdoor displays, historical plaques that probably would be mixed in with the preservation stuff, speakers, working with the library staff since they have an excellent historical speaking program, and maybe even considering if we really get ambitious, a history symposium, Redondo History Symposium in the community. So that's what I envision we could do with bringing history to the community. So I'd like to be on it. You've been a history major, haven't you?
I was a history minor.
I'd be fine on that, yeah.
Okay.
You want to form a new committee is what we're doing.
Yeah, form a committee, bring to the commission all different ideas and work with multiple departments and.
Adding community engagement, historical issues, topics.
Right, trying to excite the community about all the history in Redondo, which seems to be part of our mission anyway.
So that sounds like a good idea. The only thing I would like to remind Commission is we need to set clear objectives and also set a timeline for the committee as well. So, but please do proceed.
That sounded like half a caution, half a,
When you say a timeline, you mean for accomplishing goals or? that
Yes.
Are not yet, we don't know what the goals are?
Yeah, typically, if you were to say, by September 25, these objectives will be met and clearly delineate the objectives. It may be something that is such a good idea that we might want to think about and return with a specific agenda item for discussion since, maybe making a decision and formalizing everything right now might not be the best in essence of time, but I'll leave that up to commission. But certainly might be something that we could bring back as a discussion item on a future agenda. We would just want to work on the wording of it, and we could have a discussion about those members and also set clear objectives and a clear timeline.
I was actually going to make that point as well, because one of my continued items from previous agendas was the progress with establishing bylaws. And I think, we established existing subcommittees from the other consolidated commissions from a sense of urgency. But I do think I'm not adverse to, creating additional subcommittees. I just think that in our first meeting, there were certain ones that, like the consideration for historic, appropriateness, we don't want to hold people's projects up for that, right?
Mhm.
So I think perhaps, the creation of any additional subcommittees, it might be wise to have the bylaws established, and then we can go and set forth, if we want to establish any additional subcommittees. But again, I think
I'm representing two different of the commissions before, and most of the stuff actually, we used to have approximately 17 subcommittees on historical, because
oh my God.
each of the projects dealt with something.
Why do that to yourself?
It's a lot.
But there's a lot of things that ended up happening as a result of it. And so I'm happy to sit down with our director and go through and come up with the criteria. I think it's better to have another person working with me so that we can at least have a melding of the minds ultimately. So I would still recommend we have something called the Bringing History to Community. We can agendize the discussion about the scope of it if you want to. Put somebody else on it at this point in time just to get the energy moving. I'm seeing now that has no second so far.
Oh, that's the motion? I'll second the motion.
Okay.
So,
Maybe a comment real quick.
yeah.
I think this sounds like a very worthwhile effort. I'm wondering if it might be more of a club, a citywide club, and get people involved in it. My biggest concern, and I allude to it here and there, but this new commission and the merging of all of these different topics is going to be a lot of work for staff. And we just heard a moment ago that they've had some turnover and they're bringing new people on. And so it's going to take some time to evolve. But I think that within the number of topics that we have, those subcommittees and groups are intended to really make progress in between our meetings and make decisions that staff can take back and move forward with items. And I think that this is generally an idea group talking about options and opportunities for us to share our history. And I think that's very much worthwhile, but I don't know that it necessarily requires a subcommittee, because a subcommittee, in my opinion, will require staff participation.
I'll give you a good example. The plaque that we're talking about today, it probably would be good to send it to that kind of subcommittee to work out some of the language with staff on it. I'm looking at from the Preservation Commission meeting agenda from March 2012. You had subcommittees for education, for legislative, minor altercation, historic landscapes, Redondo stairway survey update, and historical district formation. So there's a lot of different projects that are out there that we can establish as far as that goes. And this is, it may be an idea generator, it may be a formation of a speakers bureau, something along those lines. But I think that getting people in the city to get excited about history and talking about it, probably in a couple months, you'll get the Path of History stuff, which I don't know if any of you have seen the markers, But that was one of the projects that came out of this kind of committee. I know I presented to Parks and Recs before different ideas to involve the parks and different ideas to do public art. So I would like to be able to do that. I would like to have somebody working with me to do that so that we can get the right synergy going. I'm also happy to sit here and not be involved in any of the subcommittees, but I'd rather do something productive and at least remind everybody that we have a historical and library commission that's been merged into what we're doing.
I have to apologize, I have to leave at 8:30. Chairman, I apologize. I do have a hall pass from Dana, so appreciate it, Principal Dana.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Be safe.
Yeah, I just want to say that that does sound really worthwhile, and I hate to see you present this idea and then sort of nobody really feel called to participate in the subcommittee. I'm sort of wondering, like, so we still need the bylaws written, and we have our two subcommittees, and I'm kind of wondering if the bylaws will, direct our priorities. Like, I'm wondering, I think there's some things
We
that
have
we,
3 committees,
Volunteer acknowledgement, public
And then
minor
Minor
alterations.
minor alterations, right?
What was the third one?
Minor alterations, facility users,
Volunteer
and volunteer acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement, yeah.
And sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that, I'm reminded of is that the Library Commission operated for many, many years without bylaws, and certainly it's a goal to get the bylaws established, but right now, the commission can operate effectively without necessarily having official bylaws adopted. It'll take some time. My goal is to have something back to you by next meeting. But if you've already established these committees, and you can feel free to establish additional committees if you'd like. But as mentioned earlier, there is a lot on our plate, and I think that engaging, and my goal is to gauging time and making sure that we make efficient use of our meetings, that we don't necessarily overburden any particular meeting, because it is more difficult to make sound decisions and make effective judgments the later it gets. So we're trying to effectively make use of our time, and my understanding was that the 2 planning items tonight were estimated to be an hour, and we thought that the recreation and parks, the historical item, was going to be about an hour. So we wanted to make sure that we were, and those are estimations that were given to me. So, I thought bylaws, even though we're working on it, would take at least an hour. So we're trying to plan and be considerate of your time and energy. So my goal is to bring those back as soon as possible.
yeah, I was just thinking about, for instance, the minor alterations subcommittee is something that is essential to moving projects forward. The facilities subcommittee is actually, I think, really important to roping in, I don't have to go into it, but I've sat in on that meeting and I think it's essential.
And they're moving, like, she had that issue with those properties, and we have a meeting coming up as well. And he's got the other ongoing things. So that was the priority for those 3, I remember.
And then volunteer, I'm just kind of thinking about it in terms of how much staff time is required to facilitate the goals of the subcommittee. And the volunteer subcommittee kind of is, I don't really think it requires a lot of staff time, because the subcommittee is doing most of the work. There's no reports that have to come back or.
Do a staff member need to be at any of the meetings if there was a committee meeting?
No, not necessarily to my understanding. And again, kind of with this merger, we're kind of feeling our way out on things, and each of the liaisons individually have a different management style. My understanding is that with Recreation and Parks, the impetus was more put on the commissioners to organize and then report back if they had any recommendations or things to bring back, whereas minor alterations, those are more driven by the department's request for these minor alterations and convening a meeting. So, we're still kind of feeling it out, but certainly there are different modes of how they meet and then respond back to commission. However, I will with that in mind, what we're also trying to do is identify clearly when these committees meet and want to bring back a presentation that they notify myself so I can put it on the agenda and we can work the report out so that it's clearly identified within the time to administer prior to the Brown Act, so, not the day before. You understand all of this stuff, of course.
So basically, if you have a subcommittee and you want to speak on an item the subcommittee's working on, you just need to have it on the agenda by that Thursday before the meeting?
It would be preferable if, for example, volunteer acknowledgement had some sort of new way to or some people to consider for volunteer acknowledgement. I'm not well versed on it. I'd have to speak to Deputy Director Orta, but we would want to make sure that that's agendized. And usually staff-wise, given the meetings are now on a Wednesday, due to the Brown Act, we would want to get that out Thursday, and depending on an open Friday or closed Friday, my goal is to try to get it to you as soon as possible. And I'm been trying, if there's any sort of delay, it's just, again, working with the different staff and getting the reports in on time. But to answer your question, Thursday prior to our meeting would be ideal, but then you probably want to walk that back a little bit in that you're discussing with the liaison exactly how you want to agendize the item and how much information you want to present in the item for discussion. Some of them could just be a line or two saying discuss this.
So on the Parks and Rec meeting, we had at the end of the meeting, a letter that was always there for those updates. And the reason, my understanding was because if you wanted to do an update, the commission would have to vote to put it on the agenda for the next meeting. But that's not necessarily the case right now. So if we wanted to add something on the agenda for the next meeting, we could just contact the city person for that committee a week or so prior to the meeting.
Did you see? Yes. So I don't know if you understand. I mean, if you got
absolutely,
it,
I understand.
yeah, like at the end, right before it was like member referrals, it would have a
Right.
little section for subcommittee updates.
I was going to wait till item M because I don't want to deviate too much from continued items on this, but
No, absolutely.
But it
I
still
understand.
goes through the same process where you as the director work with our chair and look over all the agenda items and come out with the agenda. We still need to, ultimately, if we're going to discuss something, even on a committee report, we still need to agendize if we're going to have a robust discussion other than just to receive and file a report.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the way you're talking about it is probably more efficient because the items don't always are that far planned out. Sometimes they are kind of spontaneous. And so I think that would kind of be helpful for the people on the committees as well. And then you can include it, because I was actually looking for that tonight. Like there was an update that I was wanting to share, but I didn't make that connection. So I would just add it where it's member items at the end, would be my understanding. But that's good to know. So I'm fine with that, that's the process for now until we get bylaws, I guess.
okay. So I don't want to go away from the original discussion item, which was the establishment of the subcommittee, which was a continued discussion from last meeting. So would you like to make the motion to try to establish it, or are you okay with continuing it for one more month while we can have some type of draft of bylaws, and then we can more confidently try to establish additional subcommittees at that point?
All the bylaws I have seen they don't have standing committees necessarily. So this would be an ad hoc committee until you guys decided to make it a permanent thing into the bylaw. So continuing it is, I don't have a problem with it. If there's no interest in working with me on a committee, then you have a different issue with regards to what kind of projects you envision the commission having ultimately in those areas. So I would like to make the motion that we set up a Bringing History to the Community Committee, and if we have more than myself, I would think that would be great. If you're willing to do a committee of one, we've done that before in a number of different commissions that I've served. So I'll leave it to you guys. I'll make the motion. If there's no second, there's no second. If there is, then.
But I think also as a part of the motion to establish the subcommittee, you have to have clear goals and objectives, like bullet pointed out, or maybe not bullet pointed out, but like clear objectives of the subcommittee. Like we will do X, Y, Z, and then that's how the establishment of the subcommittee, and then we would vote on it, of course. But do you have like bullet points for each thing that you're proposing for this?
We work on the museum. We heard from last month that there's a concern that they need more volunteers at the museum. We work on outdoor displays, which is what the whole historical commission dealing with bringing history outdoors, which is our Path of History stuff. The historical plaques actually ties in with what preservation did before. Speakers, that's working with the adult education person coming up with stuff, and historical symposium ultimately, if something comes up with that. So I think there's not a bullet point specificity, but there is a parameter that can be envisioned and then come forth and be carried out. And if it needs to be in the bylaws at that point, it can be.
I mean, none of our subcommittees were in the bylaws for rec and parks. So,
I mean, if you're just creating a subcommittee on promoting Redondo Beach history,
Can we individually do that if we're not?
you know, just kind of keep it wide, and then later you can add specifics.
That's what the historical commission did at one point.
That's what I would, if you were, I mean, if you want to push it now, then that's what I would suggest, that it just be a committee on the promotion of the history of the city of Redondo Beach, and then with more details to follow.
Yeah, I presented to you, I think you were the chair at that point of the Parks and Recs about the signage in the parks, because it's a
Correct.
park.
Yeah.
So,
And I'd be fine if you needed a second person, so I would second that and then add me to it. Not that I would be extremely hopeful in the near future, but eventually.
okay.
That would be fine. But if it's kind of something that we don't want to do as a commission right now, and maybe punt it till next month, that's fine by me as well.
I mean,
I'll iron around in more details.
I feel like we all came from commissions that we really loved working
No.
on. And so and I mean, we're getting to know each other here and the work and all that, but I think it's appropriate that someone from the historical commission comes into this commission and sort of takes on that they're passionate about. And these items are gonna come up, and it kind of makes sense to me to have a subcommittee already formed that we can say, all right, this is your subject matter, why don't you take this on? And, you know, and then at that time, more people could possibly join. I mean, I don't really see anything wrong with that, but.
Okay. Could we make the motion with what for the establishment of, what was the name of this subcommittee?
It's basically bringing history to the community.
The Historical Outreach Community.
Yeah.
It's an amenity.
And would you have like a vision for who would be the liaisons for that on the staff side? And of course, also the caveat that given as we all have a full plate, we might not have.
The director.
Well, I would actually go talk, if it was approved, I'd go talk to Elizabeth to make sure that it would be appropriate, or talk to the city manager. But I know that, and I've already said this, I think that the library kind of is actually a driving force in getting the community as a focal point to talk about history. So I'd be working with you directly. And again, being from the Library Commission, it would be nice to be able to still integrate stuff that's relevant to the library in the process. If it's, you know, setting up just historical displays in the library or something like that, we'd be coming to you. And you could designate who you wanted within the organization. I tend not to take a lot of time of staff. Originally, when community service only had one person, the director, I was drafting the staff reports. So historical was more, you bring it, you do all the work yourself, and then you present it to the commission as a whole and they approve it. So or not approve it. If that calms, calms your
no,
nerves on it.
I was just gonna say, in Rec and Parks, we weren't asking a lot of the staff either. They weren't generating reports. They were just bringing their own updates to us. And they did, like we did Dominguez Park, and she had to facilitate those meetings with the vendor and stuff. But aside from that,
I think our philosophy was more the committees were to alleviate issues for staff, that they don't become part of the commission or kind of a drag on staff, that things that basically the commissioners can kind of figure out. And then if it becomes an issue or a big enough deal, then it comes back to the commission for discussion and whatever.
It's all a
business.
partnership between
Oh, yeah,
us
absolutely.
and the staff.
Yeah.
And so we do take that into account. But if something can't get on the agenda for the next meeting, for example, you still have the ability to move forward with stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's important to be able to have that in-between time if something does come up that, for whatever topics, and like coming from Parks and Rec, obviously, we have our areas that we're a little bit more fluent in, but I think everybody brings a little bit to the table, so I'm fine with it.
Okay. So you want to make the motion one more time, and then we'll second it, and then we can figure out.
Sure. I move that we establish a committee that is entitled Bringing History to the Community, and that myself and Commissioner McCauley, if I've heard him correctly, will be the initial person serving on it.
I'll second.
Is that sufficient? Okay, all in favor?
I
Aye.
Okay. Were there any additional items continued from previous agendas? I don't believe so. It's just a discussion of the bylaws and that. Okay. All right, we spoke about item L was moved earlier, so moving on to item M, member items and referrals to staff.
Chair, if I could just do a quick update. Because we were able to organize the facility users meeting, we're going to have a meeting next Thursday. We're trying to have representation from the youth groups and nonprofits that utilize city facilities, and that'll be taking place next Thursday at Veterans Park at 6:30. The senior center at Veterans Park, and we're making some contact. We're not sure if 3 people will show up or if a bunch of people will show up, but we'll find out. And we will continue the dialogue on how the city can assist in helping the leagues, basically, and the users to just kind of figure things out.
I have an item as well. So I heard from Kelly Orta, she worked on adding information regarding pickleball to the city website so that people can have up-to-date information that's publicly available. So she was great in updating that page, and she said that, continual updates will continue to happen, as well as there was some information on the Alta Vista pickleball courts. And I don't remember if, she did mention it last time, that there needs to be a sound study conducted. So that also was updated on the website.
great.
Commissioner Lang?
I have none.
I have stuff.
Of course. What's up?
And unfortunately, when I moved the community services item up, I lost the community services people, but I'll express it to you and you can talk to them. So the Historical Commission had paid for museum quality framing on, we have a bunch of letters from the presidents of the United States over time, and it was supposed to be displayed up in the museum. It's no longer there. So we need to we're trying to locate where it was and don't know where it is. But they spent city money to reframe it a couple of years ago, and it was in the museum, and then it's now not there. Also, we had talked last month about how to improve the metrics of the museum. And it would be nice to be able to, I know they have guest books there, but maybe do a census like you do with the library report of the people that come through and give us an idea of how many people in the last 6 months have come through on the days that it's open. Wednesdays, I don't anticipate there's much, or if there's student groups that come on certain day, but just give us some metrics so that we can start coming up with a plan to address what Mr. Margolis said last time. On December 14th, which is a Saturday between 11 and 3, the Redondo Beach Historical Society is holding its annual holiday celebration. And what makes it really special is that they have carolers that are dressed up in Victorian style come by the museum. They have refreshments. I'm understanding that there may be an opportunity for the piano that's in the Morel House to be tuned. I encourage each one of you, since we do have that as part of our purview, to go visit the Historical Museum, go visit the Morel House. It's over at Dominguez Park. You can see all the improvements that they're doing to Dominguez Park as well. And I know you've honored some of the people that have done the dog park over there, but that's going to be on December 14th. I understand that they're going to be taking donations for a children's organization. January 19th, 2026 is going to be the Charter Day, and I want to explore with you, Mr. Vinke, about having the display that's been created for it that includes quotes from the city attorney, the city manager, the city clerk, displayed in the library. We're going to have a couple charter amendments coming up in March. We just had some done to the last election, so it's kind of an educational display. It was displayed a couple years ago as well.
So could you just review that date for me? I have 2026?
It's 2025.
Okay.
And it's January 19th, which means we'll have to move it because I think that falls on a Monday this time around. And it's the 76th anniversary of our charter. So, and then you gave us a tour when we were in the Library Commission of the library. You have that television studio in there. Yeah. Is there any way to find out if there's somehow we can take advantage of that studio and get into the TV contract and put on historical vignettes about the city?
The room is currently, I think, semi-storage for equipment, but it is available for rental from the public, from the room rental. So currently it is available for a fee. If some groups wanted to utilize the room to film something, I think originally back in the day, it was designed to be kind of like back in the day of VHS city cable, was designed to be like a video studio. It does have soundproof walls. It is pretty small, but I think over the years, it never got up to speed on that. It's something we could definitely look into, but yeah, being also that its location is not exactly as convenient as other locations might be, in that it's on the second floor, it's close to administration. The doors are pretty heavy, obviously because they're soundproof, so it's not exactly 100% easy to get in and out of. But I guess what we'd want to do is refine exactly what you want to do, identify what exactly the goal is, the objectives, and if there were people that came from the community that wanted to utilize the room, that would be a discussion that we could have.
You know, I'm old enough to remember when they started with cable TV, they used to have all these public access programs. I don't even know if it's in the contract anymore, but it would be nice, rather than seeing on the slides, the same slides, you know, for 24 hours a day, to throw in some programming. And I don't even know if that's possible or who to talk to about it.
Right.
So anyway, I think that covers my list.
I have nothing.
All right, and then I just had a couple quick little points.
Yeah.
My kind of recurring one with Kelly Orta for the last little bit was just signage at Dale Page Park pertaining to e-bikes. You know, it's kind of like my local walking distance park. There's kids beelining it through Dale Page to the bike path. You know, a lot of people take strollers there. It's been kind of a thing that I've been saying for quite a bit, but
There's an update in there. Did you see it? about that.
For the signage for it?
Like they were talking about doing two, like a pedestrian and a bike path. It was in her recreation, yeah.
Didn't see it in the admin report, but I'll double check it. But normally I would just refer it to her and she would give the update. But yeah, so, I walked it yesterday, walked it today, same
Yeah.
thing, with e-bikers beelining it through. So, so that was just one thing. I also did want to, just commend the Parks and Rec staff. For whatever reason, the last month I've been going to like every park within the city for one reason or another. I voted at Perry Park, I walked Anderson Park or Alta Vista, for facility rental stuff, and the park staff have just been excellent everywhere. And, part of just walking the park, I kind of ask people like, hey, do you like the park? What's going on? That sometimes people think it's a little weird. Like the nannies at Dale Page Park definitely think it's kind of weird, but I think for the most part, there's been a lot of really good feedback with, the public parks. So I just wanted to commend city staff for that as well.
Thank you.
And that was it. If there's nobody else with any member items, we'll move on to item N, which is adjournment. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. It's right here. It's kind of like not really a huge update.
Are we adjourned?
Yep, we're adjourned.